Hello, and welcome to Story Time. I'm Kathy Ramsperger, author of the award-winning The Shores of Our Souls and the upcoming 1,000 Flying Things. I'm also a coach who founded Ground One and Step Into Your Story. Today we have a dynamic creative guest who can help us juggle all our flying things. A coach who mentors women in the midst of transition to transform and thrive. And ladies and gentlemen, we are in the middle of a huge transition globally. Kaylee Mullis will be fielding your questions as usual, so have them ready. Please put them in the comments section. A little bit about Maria. She's a certified career and life coach specializing in helping women turn transitions into triumphs. She brings into play her 30-year corporate leadership experience and some big corporate leadership experience, along with what she learned from navigating many life-changing events like women experience, loss, grief, divorce, career upheavals. Maria's a master of reinvention, and she can teach you to be that too. She's passionate about teaching what she's learned. So that's why she coaches and mentors women like you and me who struggle to find meaning every once in a while and purpose every once in a while in our careers and lives. And Maria is also an incredibly prolific, award-winning author and speaker, and she hosts the #1 most watched podcast on Voice America TV, which we'll talk a little bit about. It's called Tips for the Transition. And it can be seen live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube every Wednesday and heard on all major audio podcast platforms. And there may be some transition we talk about there too. And now I'd like to introduce you to the master of reinvention herself. Let's get started with our conversation. Maria, welcome.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Wow, that's a title, Master of Reinvention.
I think of you as though.
I have had a few.
Well, I've also watched you do it for so many other women. All you have to do is go to your podcast and watch and see the transformations. You're amazing. And today I'd really like to talk about what got you there, what brought you to start your business and what inspired you along the way. Can you tell us just a little backstory?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned my corporate career. I had the, really the honor to coach and mentor mostly women when I was in my corporate career. The last almost 20 years was with IBM, and they had a formal mentoring program. So I have had mentors all my life. I love the concept of mentoring, and I was a mentor for nearly all of those 20 years. And I loved coaching and mentoring women both formally and informally. So at the end of that gig with IBM, we have a visitor here. My buddy Sage has come to visit. At the end of my career, which ended not by my hand, I was laid off. My entire global team and I were laid off. But I had the opportunity then to think, okay, what do I want to do next?
That's exciting.
And
it's scary, but it's exciting.
Very scary. The panic set in first. But then after a while, I started thinking about, do I want to get back into the corporate arena, or do I want to use what I've learned that I love to do? And that is coaching and mentoring. So that's what I chose to do. So I went back to school, got certified, and started my own business. And I've been coaching and mentoring women, and now in this season, during and after COVID, there are a lot of career transitions going on, and I have a heart to help the women who are going through career transition right now.
That's so needed right now.
Mm.
And it's such an opportunity for women, I believe. It's one of the very small good things about COVID is that people actually, bosses are realizing that people do actually do work when they're at home, and that they have a deadline, they will meet it, and new businesses opening everywhere. So it's a good time. And as Dickens would say, it was the worst of times, it was the best of times.
Yeah, indeed. It is a silver lining of sorts. One of the things I realize is that so many of the women I speak with, they are thinking and feeling differently about the work they do in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing. And it's causing many of them to reassess how they work, where they work, what they do for work. And that leads to wanting not to go back to the status quo, but to create a new normal that feels better to them.
So you definitely did that with your own life, and it is portrayed in your wonderful book, From Upside Down to Right Side Up, which is available on all online retailers and through your website.
Right.
So can you tell us that opening scene? I thought of reading it, and then I thought I really would love if Maria would tell us the story, because you are the consummate career woman every time I see you.
Mhm.
And I would think that certain people think, oh, she's got it made, and she always has. And I think we all have our dark night of the soul. And so if you'd honor us with that story, I would be so happy. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I start my book this way with this story because I've had a lot of transitions in my life, and this is not the first, but it was the wake-up call, I think. So I was in my second marriage, and it was not going well. And I'd known that for a long time, but I was the first in my entire family for generations to be divorced the first time. And the last thing I wanted was to be that woman who was divorced twice. So I did everything I could to save my marriage, to work on my marriage, to make it work. And what I recognized finally is that I had compromised all of my values to make it work.
And he compromised anything, I'm pretty sure, because it's usually the female role that just keeps trying and trying and trying to make it work.
And I was a perfectionist at heart. I was raised to be the good girl. And I was a fixer. So all of those things created a perfect storm.
Fixers can cause some complications with life.
Yeah, and there are so many things we can't control or fix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I finally realized, after going through some therapy, I actually hired my first coach back then to help me realize that. She said to me at one point, what makes you think you can turn an apple into an orange? So I was at my wit's end at this point, and my husband and I had a literally a knockdown, drag out fight the night before. He slept upstairs. I slept in our bedroom. And in the morning, after very little sleep, I got ready as quietly as I could. And I was sneaking out of the house. And we lived in a multi-level condo. And I was heading down to the downstairs where the garage was. And I went into the kitchen to get my briefcase. And I came out of the kitchen and he was there in front of me. I hadn't heard a thing. Sorry. He had my very favorite chef's knife in his hand, and it was pointed at my belly. Now, I had never, even as a child, been able to scream.
You're
But
very
I,
composed. You're very composed.
I'm sorry.
You're very composed. It's in
Yeah,
your
I am. I've always been that way. And but anyway, I let out a blood curdling scream that morning in that situation. And I must have scared him. I literally scared him to his knees. He dropped the knife. He dropped to his knees and he started crying. And I just said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And instead of walking downstairs to the garage, I walked out the front door, shaking like a leaf.
of course.
And I walked over to my neighbor's house and called the police. And that was my turning point. I don't recommend that anyone ever let it get to that point. It could have been disastrous. If I hadn't screamed in that moment, I have no idea what would have happened. But the good Lord gave me a voice at that moment, and I've been able to use it ever since.
And for that purpose, I mean, I think that there are times in our life that we could leave the earth or not, and I just want to thank Providence, Spirit, God, whatever, for keeping you here with us and to take your lessons and how they empowered you, and now you're empowering other women with them. And so let's get to that, but I want to honor you and thank you for that story. I know.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So your clients and women today in general, when they come to you, what's the common thread among their stories, and what are they thinking or feeling when they're just so fed up with something? It's usually career, I believe, if they're coming for you, but I feel like career and life are so enmeshed today. It should be, as they should be. It shouldn't be like, oh, over here I work and over here I with my family. But I'd love to know what you see, what they come to you for. What's their problem and they need a solution for?
It's really interesting what you just said about career and life. I believe that our careers, what we do for a living, is just a piece, right, of our life. And it doesn't belong in the number one spot, right? It should not be our primary or sole focus of how we live in this world. I think that leads to a lot of damaging stuff. So what I find my clients who come to me, and I am a career and a life coach. So I work with people on women mostly on who they are, because They so often come to me and say, I don't know who I am anymore.
Mm.
I've been doing this, whatever this is. I have been in this job for so long, or I have been trying to balance everything, my role as a wife and a mom and a caregiver and a career woman and a friend, a community leader, whatever else is on their plate. And they've lost sight of who they are in each of those roles, but first for themselves. And that's what I start by helping women figure that out. Who are you now? Not yesterday, not because someone told you that's who you should be. Who are you now? And what do you really want now? Because you're changing. We are all changing. And the pandemic has been a blessing and a curse, right? Caused us to reevaluate a lot of things. And that's not a bad thing.
No, it's a very good thing,
Hmm.
because we don't usually have the time, even if we want the time, to be able to assess and to be able to, and women in particular, we lose sight of what we want. I was just asked that question by my own coach last week. Kathy, what do you want? Not what does everybody else want me to do?
Right, right. And that's a question that I find many women don't have the answer to,
Mhm.
because they've given up what they want. I said it earlier, compromised values. I did that for a very long time to keep the peace. We tend to do that. Women tend to do that because we're raised to do that, right? We're told, we're taught the role that we should play and how we should play it. And it's now, I think it's time for us to learn the word no, learn how to use it so that we're not alienating everyone, but we are setting boundaries that are healthy for everyone. And finally recognizing that when we are at our best, everyone around us wins.
Mm.
And when we're not at our best, we and everyone around us loses.
So true. So true. A universal truth. I
Yeah.
totally agree. So when they come to you, you guide them, and I'm assuming it's in little steps. Change doesn't just explode overnight. Even if there's a trauma inflicted that causes the first step to be a leap. So, in your opinion, does the change that happen always catalyze a life? Does it need to be a traumatic catalyst? I'd love to know about that.
No, in fact, often they're little things that we allow almost unknowingly, not noticing, and they pile up. And they get to a point where it might lead to a catalytic event. But it's usually not. I mean, there are lots of things that can happen in our lives that are traumatic, they are sudden, they are unforeseen, and they will turn our worlds upside down. Absolutely, that happens. But often it's that we just keep doing what we're doing day after day after day after day, and don't take the time to recognize that we're not happy, that we don't really like doing that anymore, that we don't really want to do that anymore. However, we don't really know what to do, what else to do, or what to do differently. And we may not know what steps to take to change it because it all feels so big and overwhelming. I've been doing this for years. How do I shift? How do I change? What do I do first? And then what do I do? It's all very overwhelming for many. So one of the things I do is help them, first figure out who are they and what do they really want? And then what is the plan that they put in place? They've got a vision, right? We work to create this vision. And then we figure out how to break that up into small chunks and work on one thing at a time. And look back, celebrate the progress we've made, and keep moving ahead.
What a beautiful plan. So I think one more question and then we'll turn it over to Kaylee. Maria has brought a wonderful gift to all of us today, and we'll share that in the comments when we take your questions. All you'll have to do is click the link. And I think we'll go to the questions now, because I'd like to have some questions if they're there, and then go into specifics of the workplace today, the challenges women face. Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Kaylee.
No problem. All right, so we just had a few comments come in actually. We have a comment from Lucille Dorothy, and she says, I think for me, the COVID issue was more of a blessing. Made me think who was important and wanted to stay in my circle. Also, you live each day thinking maybe something won't happen, but you know it will. I finally sought help, which made him crazy. And then we have a question or a comment from Noelle Puglisi. And she says, actually, it's a question. How do you convince someone to change or shift if they are resistant to that?
Well, I guess the question, I have a question back for clarification. I don't know if we can do this, Kaylee, but if we're talking about changing someone else when they're resistant, we don't have that power. It's not ours to try to change them, right? But if we are resistant to change ourselves, it's a matter of figuring out how badly you want something. If it's something that you just thought, oh, that'll be nice, that it would be nice if it did, but I'm not going to do anything about it, then that puts you in, I often like to say, nothing changes until you change something. So that puts you in a passive role, right? If it changes, that'll be great, but I'm not going to take any action to do it myself or to make the shift myself. So what it takes, even if you're resistant, mostly the resistance comes from fear. So we would explore, what are you afraid of? What's on the other side? I just wrote something. I was just writing an article, and it's the devil you know, right? Staying with the devil you know is easier because there is fear on the other side of that fear of the unknown. Not quite, I know what I got. I'm not quite sure what I'll get. So I'm just going to stay here in my comfort zone. I hope that helped to answer that question.
She said understood, and she didn't clarify anything else. So I think you answered her question.
Okay,
Thank you.
Right.
So Kaylee's going to put the link to the gift.
Yes.
And it'll be there now and in the future. And I highly recommend it. Totally, totally without charge. Thank you, Maria.
You're welcome.
So, what are some of the challenges women are experiencing at work today that they didn't before COVID? And I'm wondering also, with I had a lot of corporate experience. I hate to call it corporate because it wasn't IBM, it was Red Cross, but it was a big,
Corporate.
big place. And I think with our combined experience, we have a lot of insight in terms of things like flex time or sick leave or family leave or job sharing or telecommuting. But as far as I can tell today from the young women I coach, it's still not very common. And I just wonder if those are the kinds of things that you hear about.
Yeah, for sure. The most obvious one is where everyone was forced to work from home. And now what I hear is a lot of women resisted the idea, didn't think they would do well, found out that they actually were more productive. And they loved the carpet commute rather than getting in their car and driving every day. And they don't want to go back. And some companies are considering that as a new model or as a partial model, giving people the opportunity to continue to work from home with some flexibility for, come in for office meetings and that sort of thing, but do your main gig at home. Other companies are not offering that as an option at all. And a lot of women are struggling with that decision because they like being home with their families, for their children, even though their children are now mostly off to school again. The fact that they have this more productive time and they can be there when the kids get home matters to them. It matters a lot. So
driving in bumper to bumper traffic, they're producing during that hour rather than listening to the radio or an audiobook, which I'm all for, but they're actually producing from the time they're able to get to their desk to the time that they aren't.
Yeah.
Well, I hope the divide closes a little bit. It sounds promising, but I don't know.
Well, I think there are more. There's some of the it's hard for me to describe them. I don't want to say the more progressive companies, but I think the more aware, the ones who are listening, right, to what their employees want, how they want to work. And I think they will ultimately be very successful, and maybe more successful than the companies who insist on going back to the status quo, because that doesn't exist anymore. It got blown up by the pandemic in people's minds. So going back to the way it used to be.
Paradigm did. The paradigm is gone.
Paradigm shift, exactly. Going back to the way it used to be is just not, it's not a consideration for a lot of people.
Cool. So what's the number one fear you hear women come to you with that keeps them stuck in the status quo, whether it be in life, career, or both?
Well, there are a number of them, but I think probably the number one fear?
Or one of them. It doesn't need to be statistically.
Well, it's the fear of not knowing. There's so much that has been uncertain for us throughout the last 19 months. And there are still major uncertainties.
And it's fluid.
And it's very, yeah, and totally out of our control, right? And maybe that's part of it too, that sense of having no control over our lives or our careers within our lives. So those are probably right there, side by side. But not knowing if I do this, what will happen?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very unsettling place to be. But the fact of the matter is, no one knows. We are all in this same boat. No one knows for sure. So all we can do is accept where we are today. It is what it is. And take steps. Don't let it paralyze you that you don't know. Take steps that are, do your research, do your reading, talk to people, get the help you need to open the aperture so that you can see the possibilities and then explore the possibilities. There are lots of options out there. So identify what your options are, move towards making a choice, test out your choices, and then take the step to make the decision about this next thing you want to do. And you said it earlier that I probably work in small steps. I think everybody should, because quite frankly, when you make this major leap, the course correction is a lot harder than if you take small steps and you recognize that this doesn't feel really good to me. And you just kind of move back a little bit, reassess, rejigger, and take another step in a different direction. So it's all a process, but this idea of being afraid of the unknown, that is a human condition. And I don't think we can change that, but we can adapt to it. We can figure out how to work with it in a way that makes us feel good.
Beautiful, beautifully said. I want to get to your three main pillars, but I also want to talk about the generational advice. How would your advice differ to a young woman who's just graduated with high marks, but can't find her first job during this pandemic versus a midlife woman, say, coming midlife is almost not even somebody who's had a child or a family member to care for and is going back to work, or a midlife woman who is an empty nester perhaps and has an expansive amount of time now compared to what she used to. How would you, and it doesn't have to be all three, but especially I have my young ones who are coming into the workforce in the pandemic, and I see the difference. There's similarities to 1980 when I started. We were in a huge recession in 1980, but it still wasn't the pandemic.
No, we thought we had it bad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, it was a devastating time. It was hard. Each one of those scenarios, situations you described that women could be in seem very different. However, I think there is a common thread for each of them, for all of them. And we as as people, I work mostly with women, so I'm going to say with women, but I know this happens for men too. I've been called on that before. I did a post recently and somebody said, a man responded and said, it doesn't happen just for women, you know. It was a post about confidence and losing confidence. He said, it doesn't just happen.
Coach mostly women.
Okay.
I would love to coach a gentleman. I'm putting my little flag up
There
now.
you go.
I have one, I'm book coaching right now. He's my first.
That's
And
great.
it's been lovely. But I would love to coach men.
Yeah.
I've only coached women so far.
There you go.
That one gentleman.
Yeah. So anyway, that silver thread that I think binds them together is it's one of the things I teach. It's knowing who you are, first of all, first and foremost. Just get really, really comfortable and grounded firmly in who you are so you can show up authentically being that person unapologetically. And that takes a lot of courage because we grow up, even for the midlife woman, she may still be harboring these beliefs that she was taught as a young girl. And she may be living those beliefs or living by them, and they don't serve her anymore. Mm-hmm. So getting to know who you are today, now, given all that's happened, or not a lot that's happened so far in your life, I don't think my advice would be any different for any of the situations you described. I do believe that is, one of the pillars of what I teach.
Yeah, it's the human connection. We have many similarities to our challenges and the solutions to them. So that was a brilliant answer. So let's talk about the 3 pillars, and then there'll be time for more questions.
Okay.
And I have one more question after that.
All right.
Covered almost everything.
So 3 pillars. I just shared the first one. Know who you are. Without any apology. And getting really grounded on what you value most. Right? So that's part of knowing who you are. Getting really grounded on what you value. And then the second one is know what you want. Discover what you want. So you may have grown up being told that you're going to be a great wife and mother, and yeah, you might have a job, but your family is going to come first in your life. And then as you grow up, you start feeling really guilty because you love the work you do in the world. You love your career. You love to travel. You love these meetings. You love all of it. And you don't feel as connected, right, to being a wife and mother, but you feel guilty because that's what you were brought up to think you should be, right? Yeah. Yeah. Raise your hand out there if that's you. Yeah, so it's knowing what you want now with all of the kind of the baggage, the luggage, I like to call it. So we have all different kinds. In my book, I talk about the different kinds of luggage we carry around with us. Some of them are Pullmans that we literally pull behind us. And that can be loaded with limiting beliefs, things that just really keep us stuck. When you know what you really want, you can examine all of that and go, yeah, it served me once. I was raised with, great values and ethics and all of that. That served me, but now, today, this is what I want to believe instead. And that's what's going to take me forward. So knowing what you want is the second pillar. And the third one is figuring out how to get it, how to make that happen. And that's often the piece that women come to me for. It's because they may know who they are, they may know what they want, sort of, but they have no idea how they can make it happen. And knowing how is really the key to all of it. Once you know who you are and you stand in that firmly, and then you know what you want, that's the vision. Then learning how to make that happen for yourself so you can be happy in your life, have harmony in your life, in every role you play. And understand that I don't believe in balance. I don't believe there is such a thing as work-life balance. I believe in harmony, though. I believe that we can play with the pieces of our lives. And, this day I'm going to be focused on being, the best wife that I can be, because today that's really important to someone. But tomorrow it might be different. That's harmony, right? That's allowing the elements of our life to play together, rather than feel like you have to be, here, everything has to be here. It doesn't work.
My favorite quote is, maybe not my very favorite, but top 5 was from Maria Shriver, and she was pregnant with her first child, and she was on some morning show, I don't remember which channel, and she said, you can have it all. I'm here to tell you, all the women out there, you can have it all, but not all at the same time.
Not all at the same time. That's right. That's so right. You can have it all. I think we all can. Men and women alike, we can have it all. We have to work at finding that harmony for each of us. And it's a very personal, it's a very personal symphony for us.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. I think so often we think there's a formula when we're all unique and we all have our own formula. Beautifully said.
We do. We do.
So, can you leave us with, you've given us lots of tips, but a value system tip and your gut check for making big life decisions? Do you remember talking about that?
I do. It's one of the things I teach my clients. So we talked about values being a very important piece of who you are, and it informs your vision. Because if your vision isn't based on your values, it won't be in alignment with who you are. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I do a very deep assessment with my clients, a values assessment. And I know there are lots of value assessments out there. This is a simple approach and a lot of fun. It's about 175 values that are written on cards. And I suggest that they sit on the floor and lay them all out. And then there are 5 categories. And I suggest they put them in each value in one of the categories, from essential, must have, can't live without, down to, not even on my radar, not important to me at all. And the ones in between. And then the exercise is to get down to looking at the essential column. And very often there are like 20 of them in there. Mm-hmm. And the tough part is narrowing that down to the top 5. Because when you have the 5 most important core values top of mind for you at every moment of the day. You know who you are. You know what you value most, and every decision, every choice gets easier because you use it like a checklist, and you say, okay, I have this choice and this choice. This choice aligns with my value of, integrity, ethics, family first, whatever they might be. It aligns with 3, but not the other 2. This choice aligns with only one of them. It's an easy no over here, where it only aligned with one value, because you're compromising the others if you make that decision.
Right.
And that's not where you want to go.
No.
So it's that values checklist that becomes a key tool in their treasure chest when my clients leave that activity, that part of the program, knowing that they always can make decisions easier.
And they make their own cards, or you have these cards?
That's part of the program. They get them in the card form. And they like lay them out on a table or on the floor.
I love that.
With them.
So I hope we have time for one more tip before we leave, but let's check and see if there are more questions. Thank you, Kaylee.
Of course. We have one last comment, and it's from Noelle Puglisi, and she says, very, very informative. Thank you so much for your input and information.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kathy, for having me.
It's my honor. It's my honor. I just know how wise, and there's a reason your cat's called Sage. But
Kind of a double entendre. He actually has
Yeah.
sage eyes.
Okay, all right. I do think that you have so much more, and so much of it is free of charge. So please do check out these free trainings, and it can help you with career or job choices, relationship challenges, loss and grief. And I can't imagine there's anybody untouched by that right now.
Oh God, yeah.
Caregiving for a loved one, any kind of life-changing event. And I would just also say that life-changing means transformation, and it might not make us happy, but it's going to create the change. And what is in our control is the choice we make about the change. I think that's really it, unless you have one tip to leave us with.
Well, I just love
where else we can find you.
I'll mention that in a second, but I just love to comment on what you just said about making the choice to change, and that means transformation. With all of that comes growth. Mm-hmm. Whether we like it or not, we grow through change, whether we recognize it or not. Mm-hmm. And if we recognize it, then we get to keep the momentum going, keep growing, keep making choices that will allow us to explore new options and not stay stuck, because stuck is no place to stay.
Mm-hmm. So true. So true. Thank you, Maria. So please tell us where we can find you other than the link that Kaylee's put below. It's transitionandthrivewithmaria.com.
Right. So that's probably the best way to find all of the podcast, and which we do weekly. You mentioned it before, called Tips for the Transition. So it's transitionandthrivewithmaria.com.
And all the tabs, everybody, they're it's very well organized website. There are the shows, there are different seasons, and there's a tab for books and there's a blog tab. It's just amazing how much information is on there. You're quite prolific and wise, Maria.
Oh, thank you, Kathy.
Well, thank you. And viewers, thank you for tuning in, whether it's live or later. You can tune in next Thursday for my author story hour over on my author Facebook page, where I'll be interviewing James Garrison. He's author of 3 noir novels. The 2 we're going to be talking about is my favorite is first, the one set in Vietnam, and another set on the Texas Gulf Coast of a Texas oil refinery, where the first Black supervisor, it's in the 80s, the first Black supervisor turns up dead. And it is a murder mystery, sort of in the vein of Grisham, but I love Jim Garrison's voice. He's a retired lawyer and a Vietnam vet himself, and his books show it. And you can join us here live every second Thursday, me and Kaylee and our guests like Maria on this Facebook page. And you can find all of our interviews archived both on Facebook and on YouTube. And you know where to find Maria. You can find more about me and my work at shoresofourSouls.com and ground1coaching.com. And I am looking forward to seeing you all here again. Feel free to post away, even if you're seeing this after the fact, and I'll make sure if it's something I can't answer, I'll ask Maria. And I always check this page. So I wish you a great weekend, and I wish you a great book to read during it. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.